the Woburn School Committee meeting for March 2nd, 2021. We all salute the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, good evening, everybody. Could the superintendent please call the roll?
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Here.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Here.
Mr. Morenin?
Present.
Dr. Wells?
Here.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes, I'm present. I want to announce to the public that this meeting is a public meeting. It's being broadcast at the Woburn Public Media Station. The participants in this meeting will be recorded. In addition, I have two school committee members that are participating remotely, Mr. Andrew Lipset and Ms. Patricia Chisholm. And should we call a vote, those members will be voting by roll call since they are remote. I think that's it. I think that's okay. First on the agenda is approval of records for 2/9/21. Any action? Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor? Aye.
Roll call.
Can you roll call those two?
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Morenin?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes, that motion passes 7-0. Moving on to student representatives. I believe they're on the Google Meets. Dr. Crowley, could you introduce them?
Absolutely. So tonight we are joined by Sarah Delano as a student rep from WMHS. Sarah, you're on mute, so whenever you're ready, feel free.
Hello, everyone. So as of today, at the high school, cohort D, which consists of EL 1 and 2 students and also the task students, started back to school 4 days a week on March 1st, which brings approximately 100 students back to school 4 days a week. The fall 2, also known as the wedge, athletic season started after February break, which brings football, volleyball, indoor track, and cheerleading into their season that's been long awaited but finally here. Access testing for EL students is taking place, and planning is also in action to solidify a schedule for AP students taking tests later in the spring and grades 10 and 11 students that have to take MCAS. Course recommendations and selection are in progress for grades 8 through 11. The program of studies for 2021-2022 year is published and was distributed to all students either at the beginning of this week or it will be distributed later this week. WMHS admin and department leadership presented to the incoming 9th graders and parents. Mr. Martin and Ms. Sands will meet with grade 8 students this week, and Ms. Anderson will meet with grade 8 EL students in person this week as well. Current grades 9 through 11 will complete course selection the week of March 15th. Also, senior events are being tentatively planned, and we actually had a meeting, the seniors had a meeting with Ms. Callanan today about upcoming events, including ordering of caps and gowns, senior internships, and more. The Embrace Club worked to raise awareness during Black History Month in February. They posted a bunch of posters of influential African Americans throughout history and also up to date throughout the high school, so that you could read about them as you were walking to class. A number of students took the ASVAB, or military entrance exam for enlisted soldiers, at WMHS on February 24th. The Woburn High Theater Company put on their very first production this past Friday and Saturday. It was student run, directed by senior Lauren Schwed, and assisted by Mr. and Mrs. Thomas, who are proud to begin the journey of the Woburn High Theater Company at the high school. The production was called The Help Desk, and it was an online production and it was a comedy, so it was very entertaining. The 2-year NEASC report was submitted to the NEASC on March 1st. This is a planned step toward the next accreditation cycle. WMHS will run a Woburn High student-only SAT on March 24th during school day, similar to how the PSAT was run in October. This is the first opportunity that the College Board has afforded WMHS to run a Woburn-only exam, which is the safest plan during the COVID pandemic. And last, the French National Honor Society will be presenting French films via Google Meets for all who would like to join in order to celebrate Le Mois de la Francophonie, or the French Language and Culture Month in March.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Any questions for the student representative? Not seeing any. Mr. Lipset and Ms. Chisholm, do you have any questions?
No, we're good.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for coming to the meeting tonight. I want to remind you that you're perfectly invited to stay for the duration of the meeting and help us deliberate on any topic that's on the agenda, but of course you can't vote, so you're welcome to stay. Okay, looks like she's going to. Okay, public comment. Due to crowd control and contact tracing, I asked anybody that wanted to address the school committee to send me an email. I did not receive any, so I do not anticipate any public comment. And Councillor Michael Concanon, I believe, is fulfilling his duties tonight at the City Council, so he won't be able to speak to us either, but we look forward to hearing from him at the next meeting. Reports and presentation of superintendent and staff. Dr. Crowley?
Sure. As has been our past practice for the past two meetings, we're trying to highlight a lot of the good things that are happening in the Woburn Public Schools despite a pandemic. And so tonight, presenting the silver linings are elementary principals Kristen Maloney from the Harold Wyman Elementary School and Rob Nickerson from the Malcolm White Elementary School. And I'm going to wind up sharing their presentation on the screen, and I'm going to just try to do my best to read when to move to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing now. Okay, you're on.
Okay. The elementary principals in Woburn are meeting weekly to collaborate and plan ahead for consistency to make it easier for our teachers and ourselves and our families so they know what's going on at the elementary level. So when we came across February, we knew that we wanted to make February special, and we knew that we weren't going to be able to have students pass out Valentines in their class, and that's something that the kids really look forward to. So we wanted to do something across the whole district that would lift some spirits. So Dr. Crowley, you can go on to the next slide.
Sorry.
He left. I did that on purpose.
Cardio.
So we had supplies available for pickup at each of the schools. We told students and families and reminded them through our SMORE newsletters that they could use any supplies they had at home. If they needed anything, we had them at school for pickup, and that way students that were in Virtual Academy could also be involved. And when the hearts came in, we displayed them on the main doors of each school. So Dr. Crowley, you can slide through the next couple, which are pictures of the buildings. All 7 elementary schools.
Okay.
You can speak for Harold Wyman specifically. We counted upwards of 175 hearts of kids that sent in messages from loving aspects of the building, loving their friends and the playground, specific subjects, a lot of messages about their teachers, which was nice to see. And then the second part of February, our character trait for February, is citizenship. And that's something that's a little bit, it's always tricky to teach citizenship and show kids what that means as an elementary student to show citizenship. We had a first grader at Harold Wyman in Mrs. Hooper's class who, when they had their discussion about citizenship and they got their PowerPoint that adjustment counselors and Mrs. Kent makes, the student decided that to be a citizen is to help out neighbors. And the way that he wanted to help out neighbors was to make sure that everyone had enough food to eat. So when Mrs. Cooper heard that, she sent me an email immediately and then came down to the office and said, can we do something to promote this young first grader's idea of helping others in our city? And so we came up with doing a food drive that would benefit the Council for Social Concern. So we collected food up until the Friday before February vacation. And then Mr. Nickerson and Mrs. Kent dropped off all of our boxes at the Council for Social Concern. And we did this without alerting them that we were going to do it ahead of time. So kind of caught them off guard when Mr. Nickerson's backseat and trunk were filled with non-perishables and items to stock their shelves. So they were very appreciative and kind of filled everyone's hearts by seeing that displays at the schools and then being able to do that for our community. So you can kind of click through the slides of the food drive. So each principal took a picture of their collection that we sent over, and there's Mr. Nickerson dropping off the items. And when we were talking about doing our silver lining presentation for the elementary level, the collective response from principals is just that the silver lining for us is the caring and collaboration. We're seeing teachers take care of each other. We're seeing teachers go above and beyond for their students. We're seeing the same from parents who are essentially teachers on their remote days and helping collaborate and be a partner for their students' learning. And collaboration from the elementary principals, that's definitely something that we have noticed this year, appreciate and want to continue, is that we have cohesive practices and we're able to be consistent in our messages that go out to families. And that's just something that's appreciated professionally from us.
Thank you.
Okay, that was extraordinary. Any questions from the committee to Ms. Maloney? Mr. Kissel?
Not so much a question, but just a comment. That's a great idea. I think the food drive is fantastic. I mean, for many reasons, it's obviously they're always in need of food, but obviously the kids are home a lot more now. And I know we have a lunch program, but there's that full day these kids are around. Families that have a lot of unemployment. Just in general, so it's great. I know the social concern is always in need of those types of things, and they do like the surprises. I think in the Lions Club we do a drive once in a while, so I applaud all of that's done, and the hearts look great. So I comment on that as well. So great, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Any more questions for Ms. Maloney? Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could, I just also, the silver linings part of this, I think, to Ms. Maloney or Mr. Nickerson, I think it kind of jumped out at me right away, Kristen, when you mentioned it all started from a first grader in the building. I think that says a lot for our students in the district right now, all that's going on, to even have a first grader to have that kind of thought process, and to have Ms. Hooper come down and, you guys run with the drive itself and to see the result of it. So I think that's more. I can't see on YouTube from the public media how many people are participating tonight, but it's great if the public can see that this was initiated by a first grader elementary student, and there you are delivering those food items to the social concern to families in need. So I just want to applaud you for your efforts, as well as the student and all the students across the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulrennan. Mr. Lipset or Ms. Chisholm, did you want to say something?
No, it's just great program. That was awesome.
Thank you. Anything else for Principals Maloney and Nickerson? No. I just want to thank you both for coming and just sharing this really wonderful experience. I was very moved by it, and these are the things that kids remember. Maybe they might forget math, maybe, but they will always remember like how when their city went through something like this, what they were able to give back, and it just means a lot. So thank you, Dr. Crowley.
Yeah, just again, thank you very much for your time tonight and for coordinating the efforts at the elementary school. Appreciate it, and we'll see you in the morning.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome to stay. Oh. Okay, I know this is a long-awaited presentation, so Dr. Crowley, do you want to introduce the Literacy and Dyslexia Guide
Sure.
presentation for the school committee?
I will. Let me just get oriented. Sure, so just as a background, two folks will present right now. Maureen Ryan is a special
Go that chair,
education
you can take
director.
mine and I'll go over here.
And
No, you can take mine and I'll go over.
And Courtney Young is the Virtual Academy Administrator and Elementary Curriculum Guru. And so they put together an overview of what really looks to be a pivotal transitional process for the Woburn Public Schools.
You guys have this? You have it, right?
Yeah, she sent it out.
Yeah, I thought so. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You ready for us? All right. Hi. So Ms. Ryan and I are here tonight to present an overview of the Literacy and Dyslexia Guide. A more detailed plan will follow, much more comprehensive. We're in the process of bringing in kind of more stakeholders who will be contributing to kind of the work that we've set up. And so we're kind of here tonight just to kind of walk through the process that we're taking and then kind of some of the key information and moving forward. We're ready. Look at that. All right. When Ms. Ryan and I began the process of creating this guide and what we knew kind of needed to be put into place, we really wanted to focus on equity and access to make sure that students were kind of receiving everything that they needed in order to be successful in the Woburn Public Schools, specifically in the area of literacy. And so we're going to walk through kind of how we came about our vision, what processes we're using for early identification, the different tiers that this looks like in our schools, the assessments, as well as professional development and training that'll be taking place this year as well as continuing into next year. All right. We're ready? Perfect. So we've brought together a group, myself and Abby Gillis, the ELA curriculum coordinator at secondary level. She's been working with her 612 staff as well as myself and Ms. Ryan have been working with our kind of this elementary group to be really generating what we mean by literacy, kind of K-12, and what does a cohesive program look like. So this vision, and then we'll be looking at the kind of the mission that goes with it, was brought together, created by all departments, special education, EL department, administrators, classroom teachers, our secondary ELA teachers. We had a working group. It was also pushed out to kind of for feedback, and has now been shared with families through the s'mores. Ms. Maloney was just talking about it. We pushed this out for families to see, as well as to all staff to really access. And so our literacy program offers a vertical scope and sequence with a multifaceted, evidence-based, developmentally appropriate approach. If you want to go to the next slide. And these are really kind of the meat of it, what kind of missions, the things that are really driving all of the decisions that we make around literacy in our district. And those kind of, to highlight a few, it's really talking about different genres of texts, texts that are culturally responsive, allowing students this idea of multimodal learning. It's that students are gaining literacy not only through the books that they read, but by the images that they see, by the audio that they hear, the things that they're seeing on TV and videos, and then the literacy experience is really beyond just the text in the book. It's this idea that we're talking about tonight, really focusing on what does it look like to monitor tiers and scaffold, kind of what criteria we're using to determine different kind of focus areas with literacy. And then really a big part that we've talked about kind of in these groups is just this idea of choice, that for students to have a love of literacy and a love of reading, they need to have aspects of their education that provides them with those opportunities for choosing what they want to read and what they love.
So in Massachusetts, the DESE has released new guidelines for dyslexia. We're hearing a lot about it. And the thinking is that school districts need to move from a reactive and a deficit approach to more of a proactive, preventative approach. It's to identify students early on through screening and assessment. It's to have high-quality tiered instruction and to have progress monitoring so that we have data where we can collaborate, analyze, and make sure students are where they need to be. And this is part of a process where it is evidence-based, data-driven, and the goal clearly is literacy achievement for every learner. So when we talk about early identification of dyslexia, in Massachusetts, dyslexia falls within the disability category of specific learning disability. And we are trying very hard to establish processes that are consistent across all schools so that it doesn't matter what elementary school you attend, you will have consistent practices of being identified early. And part of this is we have adopted and invested in the ESI 3, and that is the early screening inventory. This is a tool that we chose carefully. It will be used with all preschool students and kindergarten students. It is a tool that will give us the data that we're looking for, and it also will work well on a digital platform so that, given the circumstances, we can effectively and efficiently screen students. We have also created and put into our enrollment form a family history. And that family history is targeted to ask questions relating to reading challenges in families. The reason for this is that the research has showed us that dyslexia it's hereditary, and that if a student has a first degree or a child has a first degree relative that is identified and has dyslexia, they have a 50% chance of having a difficulty or a reading challenge. And I mean, that data is pretty powerful. And so one of the things that comes with the dyslexia guidance is to look at different data points when you're identifying and screening students, and family history is a critical component of that. So we have introduced a new questionnaire as students are coming in to try to pick up and collect that data. We also have invested significantly in our assessment tools as a district. Over the past year, we have adopted the DOLS Plus digital library, and we have the most current assessments, and we have our choice of assessments. So when we are trying to target a specific need, we can use what we believe is the very best tool to get the information that we want. And then lastly, dyslexia, because it falls under the realm of specific learning disability in Massachusetts, is not something that school-based teams have really embraced the actual terminology. And so part of the goal is to provide education, training, and to shift the culture a bit so that we can, with confidence, tease out and identify a student with dyslexia at an early age. And that's really a big part of the guidance. It's teasing out these students early on so that we can begin intervention as soon as possible. So as we work together on this project, I think one of the goals that we share is aligning the instruction. It's having a cohesive Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 model, because it's really important. These are our students, and it's really important that it's all aligned and that it works together hand in hand, so that if we have a student that is in Tier 1 and goes to Tier 2, or Tier 1 perhaps straight to Tier 3, that the systems in place work well together for the students.
So kind of to that point, a lot of the work that we've done is really examining kind of the programming and what's taking place in each of the tiers. And I think something that really mattered to us was that we're not looking at the tiers in isolation, that really kind of they're working together. And kind of decisions that we're making at the Tier 1 level, it's then if a student is having difficulties in Tier 1, what are the ways that we're addressing that in Tier 2 that match it well? And then if a student is continuing to struggle in Tier 2 and goes to 3, what are we doing still kind of continuing to connect to that? It's also really supported our ability to be looking at professional development, because a lot of the things that we're doing, and I think one of the kind of the most powerful parts of the PD that we've been looking into is that we really have special education and general education teachers participating in the same professional development. That kind of, in order to make the kind of learning experience for all learners what they need it to be, that kind of equity, access, is making it so that everything's transferring from kind of one place to another. The work that they're doing in Tier 2 when they go back into their classroom, or then they go back into a different group, is that it matches and makes sense, and that they can make that kind of transfer. And so really we've been looking at how can we not only ourselves as a district be looking at how these are aligned, but how are we making it so that staff can see those connections so that they can make those decisions. And so really our tier 1 is we've been looking at making sure that kind of all the components of reading that we are having kind of the resources and the training that staff need to kind of have direct and explicit instruction in each of them. If we identify with our assessments that a student is struggling in one of those areas, that we have the tier 2 resources that staff can be using. And a big part of this that we've talked about beforehand, the idea of the WIN block, the what I need block, is really the structure at the elementary level that we've built. And then this is really just making sure that within that structure that we have all the right tools and that everything is connected. And then making sure that we've kind of put everything into place, that we know that our tier 2 is monitoring students so that when students are continuing to struggle, we kind of have the data that we need to be going into ensuring that we're kind of really referring students to that tier 3 that need it, and that we're kind of making tier 2 be the place that we can really look at the data. Oh, I think we can. Forgot I was going again. And so kind of the next part of this, as we said at the beginning, is kind of this idea of equitable access and resources. And this really includes ensuring that our curriculum creates a culturally and linguistic responsive learning environment. Part of the work that we've been doing and will continue to be doing, working with the EL coordinator, is around looking at our tier 1 instruction and ensuring that it has kind of robust vocabulary, that we're integrating enough speaking and listening into our tier 1 and into our tier 2 so that we're meeting the needs of kind of all of our learners, and that's really kind of examining in it with this lens as well. And kind of the last piece, we talked about this idea of progress monitoring. We talk a lot about kind of those benchmark assessments, and something that we have always really kind of utilized in the past is this idea of progress monitoring and making sure that we're kind of watching student progress, that we have the space for the data meetings, we're having these conversations. But the other part is that we really work to house all of our data in our data analytics platform, and so that we're ensuring that students are taking assessments and staff is getting the results of those assessments quickly so that they can be responsive. And so we're really just making sure that all the pieces that we really have had to this are aligned appropriately and staff kind of know all those connections.
Assistive technology. So this is quite a year for assistive technology, and we've come so far in a year. I mean, I really think it's incredible the way this has just changed, and we've grown as a district. We clearly want to enhance our instruction with modern technological tools, and we have this year, with the help of Jen Judkins, used many different apps, learned to use many different tools, and learned to use them effectively in the learning environment. I think, there was a learning curve, but I really think we've done a great job with this. Every student in the district, when we think about reading difficulties and coding decoding, every student in the district has Read and Write for Google, which is an amazing tool, and that's something that we're also looking at is the assistive technology for students with dyslexia. And then this here, I think, is one of my favorite slides. We have amazing educators in Woburn. We have an enormous pool of talent, and we have worked very hard to line up for them the highest quality professional development in the area. And this is something that I think we're very proud of. But we have just completed a training with Sarah Ward, a multi-series event. Sarah Ward is an expert in executive functioning. We will be kicking off tomorrow a series with Bonnie Singer. Bonnie is the founder of Architects for Learning, and it is a language in literacy tool. It's a visual tool that helps to organize language, and I think it will be incredibly useful for all tiers, both general education and special education teachers. That is Barbara Wilson. We have sent this year alone over 100 educators to some sort of formal Wilson training. We use Foundation for Tier 1. We are training our educators in Just Words for Tier 2. And we have another cohort that is in the formal Wilson Level 1 reading program this year to continue to build capacity with our trained and certified Wilson staff. Melissa Orton. Melissa is from Crafting Minds. She specializes in the assessment and remediation of reading and learning disabilities. Melissa is an expert in the field. She will be providing some professional development, and she will also be working in our classrooms next year as a coach for some of our educators to do some in-person, hands-on instruction. We're very happy to have her. And Mary Ellen Moreau, Story Grammar Marker is a Tier 3 reading comprehension tool that we have invested in. Our SLPs are very happy with that, I think.
We have 4 more clicks, actually.
Yeah. We have Lindamood Bell. So we have LIPS, which is the phoneme sequencing from Lindamood, and we have B&B, visualizing and verbalizing. We have about 30 staff that will be participating in LIPS, another 30 in B&B. The Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum is our Tier 1 phonemic awareness. We recognize the importance of that early on, and that will be a great tool for us. RAVO is the program out of Tufts. Marianne Wolf put it together. It is a Tier 3 fluency program. It is highly respected, and we have about 30 educators that will be getting formal training in RAVO. And we have invested in Read Naturally Live, which is a Tier 1 and Tier 2 fluency program. It is the newest version, which is also meant for digital administration, and it will pair very nicely with the RAVO in terms of fluency instruction. And so we have really worked hard to put together a very comprehensive and robust set of tools for our educators, because with the tools, we believe that the students will get high quality instruction. And the goal is really, Matt, you can, success. We want every student to be able to access and have a high quality education where they are achieving high levels of literacy. We're very excited about this, and we're looking forward to continuing to work on it. Any
Thank you.
questions for us?
Yes, would you mind answering some questions from the school committee members? Great. Dr. Wells?
Yeah, so I guess, I know not a lot about dyslexia, so I'm very interested in what's going on. So what's the national average of students that have dyslexia?
So I believe about 24% of students identified with disabilities are coming in SLD. So the tricky part, and Massachusetts is working to collect data on this, is that specific learning disability captures multiple disabilities. So it's not easy to tease out dyslexia. So for example, within that category are math disabilities and other pieces. But that is something that I am working on getting some better data on so that we can look. We do know that we don't see it identified in the early grades. Yeah. And that is really what we're trying to, to work with the guidance on the Department of Ed. It's that there are enough indicators that we should be able to tease out and identify far sooner than what we have in the past.
Yeah. And because that was a follow-up question, in our district, what are we seeing for percentage?
Not at the early grades, so it gets a little bit technical. Yeah. Typically, in the early grades, you see students that are categorized under the category of developmental disability, which is sort of a broader scope. And what we are working towards is being able to tease that out to be more specific with that SLD or dyslexia identification early
So
on.
your thinking is we're under-recognizing it and we're going to focus on it.
I'd say that the intention of the guidance is to assist and to provide more information and guidance for districts on how to do that and to encourage that to happen.
And what is, for lack of a better term, the prognosis, early intervention with dyslexia? how does that help? What's the prognosis and the future when you identify early?
Very, very good.
Okay.
I would say that students that have intervention early on do very, very well. And the evidence-based and data-driven, there are certain methodologies that work quite well. Wilson Reading is an Orton Gillingham based, and Linda Moodbell is the other. And so we are really using the two programs where the evidence really provides good, strong indication of success.
Okay. And is there any thought about outreach to parents to help with the I don't know if there's ways parents, can help with the identification with their children at a younger age.
Yes, there is. In fact, that was a question that came up at a CPAC coffee that I held last week, and we talked about working with families as part of the stakeholder process. There are some tools that we do have in place, for example, the family history forum, but we have talked about having outreach in some forums so that we can work with families to identify and also to support them for students that are struggling.
And again, this might be an area we're going into where it'd be useful, because there's several pediatric groups in the area, and having discussion with their staff to help you with the identification, because obviously they see the children a lot before they come to the school. So you might want to think about something like that. So thank you. That's good about that. If I could, I just want to talk a little bit about the tier planning, if you don't mind. If I could.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Okay. So is the tier instruction, is that common? Is this something that's used throughout the thing? Because you were talking about the individuals doing things. Is this something that's been adapted sort of nationwide?
Yes,
Okay.
I guess they talk a lot about the three different tiers. Tier
Okay.
1 being kind of what happens in the classroom,
Okay.
and then Tier 2 is kind of it doesn't necessarily have to be out of the room. Tier 2 is kind of any time a teacher is recognizing a student having a difficulty in something and kind of addressing that one need. And then Tier 3 is kind of the bucket of where they're then identified for special education.
All right. And in terms of literacy, how are our students doing, I guess? Is putting some effort into helping, and I'm just wondering, sort of in general, how are we doing with literacy?
As a whole, in terms of kind of like our
district,
our big markers within kind of our ELA MCAS scores, we're doing pretty well. I think what we're really looking at right now, beyond kind of overall achievement, is kind of the students who we aren't necessarily meeting the needs of and identifying them early.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Wells, Ms. Cormier.
Thank you. So you mentioned the ESI 3, we're looking at K in first?
Pre-K and 1.
Pre-K and
Pre-K and K.
Pre-K and K, okay.
Yeah.
Has this started yet, or when is it going to start?
So the ESI tool is one that has been used in the district previously. So what we did is it's a current version of it that we have invested in. And students that were screened previously for kindergarten, this is the tool that was used. So we are adding to the process by using it for preschool students, and we are also adding in some of the history forms as another data point.
Okay. What about kids that are new to the district that are a little older?
They will all be screened.
And so for kids that maybe are in second or third right now, kind of on the cusp, are they going to be reevaluated as well?
So what we need to look at is, we have made the decision that for any student that comes in, we will be looking at the history form. We would need to see at the different grade levels what is appropriate for students coming in, but that is something that we will be looking at.
Okay. So if a parent had concerns and maybe didn't exactly screen in previously, they would have the opportunity to take a better look?
So there are also other assessments that will be used multiple times throughout the school year that we will have data from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that kind of the ESI 1 is that early screening tool that we use pre-K K is kind of one piece of the puzzle, but then students are also receiving through kindergarten all the way through 5th grade kind of the benchmark assessments 3 times a year, and embedded in those are also screening tools that continue to kind of support this information. So that's not really the only screener. They'll get different. So if they come in 3rd grade, they're still going to have a screening tool
Continuing
that's
to
kind of
monitor.
developmentally appropriate for a 3rd grader that would identify these areas that we'd be looking for.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Kissel?
I think this is a great opportunity. I'm so glad it's being taken care of. I actually, not sure what the term is, but I have a mild form of dyslexia. At the Lyman School, when I was there, they didn't know what it was, in the sense of that it was a speech impediment. So I went to speech therapy class, and it was kind of funny because I myself, along the way, realized that the reason I was messing up, the words, it wasn't like I had a lisp. It was that there was an S and a TH really close to each other. I was reading them. My H's were upside down. You had a phone number, and I wrote to write it down. The last 2 digits had always transposed. So I think this is great. It really wasn't identified with me until college when I was doing a lot of writing. And somebody said, I think you might have dyslexia. I'm surprised you got this far. And reading is no problem, but in general, but it's just funny. I think this is a great program. I'd be psyched to see, much earlier kids getting, this picked up. I think that's important, obviously. It didn't affect me in that sense, but it was just, I just knew there was an issue. When you pulled out of class, speech therapy, and it's not always the best thing. But so yeah, no, I applaud you, and hopefully we get some good results from this. Thank you.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, ladies. How are we doing? Thank you very much for your presentation. You may have mentioned it, ladies, I'm not sure. Any recognition of how we're going to involve the ELL and ELA students at all in this? Somewhere along the line, or are they just part of the process?
No, so we've met with Erin Cooper, the EL coordinator, and we've done a lot of work in terms of kind of what layer of the work we're working in, and kind of back to like the tiers. A lot of the work that we've talked about within that tier 1, as well as having her do a lot of work within our tier 2 group in terms of what are some of the best interventions for our L students. So she's been kind of a part of that conversation, but it's really kind of looking at kind of the tiers from that lens, for sure.
And I think along with some of the points that Dr. Wells made, the community partners we have around here, I know Courtney, you're involved with it too, but the, kind of team up and partner with the library organization as well. They're kind of getting their act together down there again, and obviously the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA programs make sure that, I don't know if we can involve some of their staff members along with our staff to kind of be part of the program, just because they're around the kids so much nowadays that, it's a partnership that we've developed, and it's getting stronger and stronger along the way here. So I applaud you for your efforts, and I look forward to the success. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from the members?
I know that
Of
John
course.
asked, but what was the percentage for Woburn? I couldn't understand the answer. The students that we have right now, or
We don't have a figure for it because of the way the data is recorded.
Yeah, we don't have a specific number, Mrs. Kissel.
Because of the way the data is recorded.
Yeah.
okay.
Some kids are being labeled as developmentally disabled, and they might actually have a specific, so they're going to tease it out and have a number for us.
Okay, no, it's just I know he'd be asking, so I just didn't get it.
He asked, and I think he's going to ask more. Dr. Wells, did you have a,
Yeah, as somebody
Second round.
who's collected family histories, I think you're going to have to do a lot of outreach, because families, are going to be reluctant to admit that they have an issue, especially when it's not directly relevant to, you're asking a question about a parent and you're really teaching their kid, and then a lot of families aren't going to see the connection. So I think you're going to have to do a lot of outreach, that this is really to help the child, it's not to judge the families and things like that, because otherwise, if you're depending upon family history, which it sounds like a strong indicator, then I think, talking to people and explaining why you're collecting that information and so forth is really important.
I think Ms. Ryan spoke about it in terms of culture, right?
Right.
A lot of it is about kind of normalizing the conversation, and that's, a big piece of this for sure.
Yeah.
so I just want to make one comment. I just find this very exciting that even during this difficult time for public education, you two have taken the lead in advancing the district and really redefining what literacy means for Woburn Public School students, and it's very exciting. And integrating early identification will certainly help these kids and also help us plan for the future and align the curriculum to make sure that the children are getting the literacy skills that they need, because you read to learn, right? So it's just really crucial. I think this is awesome, and I'm very excited for it. And of course, you did it in a collaborative way, so special education isn't over here, general ed over here, you're working together, and I think kids are going to benefit, last comment, kids are going to benefit hugely when they come back to school and their classrooms are going to be ready and responsive to this new kind of, or this re-envisioned concept of literacy. So, it's awesome.
Can I add just one more comment? You know, when we started this, one of the very first slides, it talks about equity and access. And we have a lot of L's in Woburn, and one of the components of working with L's in special education is really teasing out, is it a disability-related need, or is it because of the differences with the language? And as we've worked through this process, we've spent a lot of time talking about the different tiers and L instruction that happens at a tier 1 and then perhaps a tier 2 level. It's really having that instruction be appropriate for an L so that they're not falling into a tier 3 when they don't need to be. It's having instruction at tier 1 and tier 2 that is accessible for every student. And I think that's another, it's another focus. So when I think about, these are all of our students, and I think that's really an important part to consider, whether they're an L or a special education student or a general education student. We're really trying to make this model cohesive and aligned.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning it. And Ms. Mulrennan, thank you for bringing that question up as well. Dr. Crowley, did you have any last thoughts?
Well, my last thoughts is I think it's evidence that we're really taking great efforts to improve our district in the midst of a pandemic to get ready for when we come back to school. And a lot of the effort really is the folks in front, but there's people behind the scenes. And you went through it quickly, but the professional development that's been provided and will be provided makes all of our students better. And so it really is an exciting time, I think, to be a member of the Woburn Public Schools, and particularly a teacher that will have an impact on student achievement moving forward. So I applaud your efforts, of course, and look forward to working together every day.
Thank you so much, Director Ryan and Principal Young. And Ms. Corbier, I'm sorry, Director Ryan, did you say you spoke to CPAC about this? You had parent
Did a coffee.
So at a
conferences?
coffee this week, we had a lot of conversation about this as a whole.
Okay.
So
Oh,
it
great.
is something that, we're communicating with and hoping to have parents participate in the process as we go.
Okay. I mean, maybe we could just have this ready for them at a CPAC meeting, should you attend, just to answer
Yeah.
questions about it.
Yeah.
It'd be very, very exciting for them. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. That was great. Next, we have recommendation for appointment. As you know, the school committee is responsible for the appointment of certain positions in the district, that being associate superintendents pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 71, Section 59. And I believe that the superintendent, through a very rigorous process, has come to a recommendation for the school committee to consider. And I believe that the candidate is Ms. Courtney Young. So, Dr. Crowley, would you like to introduce this to the school committee?
Yes, this has been 2 silver linings and it's now a 3rd for the Woburn Public Schools. I just want to walk through the process a little bit publicly with everybody. Just our timeline in the process. We posted the job January 14th, and it's open for till January 29th. Over 30 applications were received. A first round of resume screening occurred on February 5th by the 3 assistant superintendents and Judy O'Neill, the HR director. A rubric was used in that process to bring the number of potential candidates from 33 to 12. On Tuesday, February 9th, a representative team of 8 people was brought in to, again, use that same screening rubric to bring the 12 people to potentially 5. The top 3 candidates then were invited in to interview, which occurred last Wednesday, February 24th. There was an interview development team composed of staff and administrators that was used in the process. I believe the committee has the rubric that was used in the interview process. We spent the day on February 24th interviewing candidates. There was a 12-panel interview committee. It was in this room, appropriately spaced. At the end of the interviews, not a surprise, but Courtney Young was selected. And so it is an honor to present to the school committee Courtney Young as the recommended candidate for the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. I've had the privilege of working with Courtney every day for the past few years. This year it seems like 1 year rolled into 5. But I can tell you the Woburn Public Schools is where we are today in large part because of Ms. Young's work, both in the virtual academy this year with the elementary curriculum, with the elementary principals, with the special ed department, with the technology department. Her enthusiasm for knowledge, there's no book she hasn't read. You have her resume. She went to Providence College and Simmons College. Not on her resume is she was accepted into multiple doctoral programs and will be enrolling at Northeastern University this summer. She has a thirst for knowledge. She began her career as a special educator in the Woburn Public Schools, became a classroom teacher, and really anyone that has had the opportunity to work with Courtney will extol her virtues. And so I think as you know, as superintendent, the opportunity to recommend Courtney Young for the position is really a great honor. So without further ado, Ms. Young.
Right. Does the school committee have any questions for Ms. Young? Dr. Wells?
Oh, yeah. There was one phrase I didn't understand, so, you answered it already, but understanding by design, I've never seen that phrase before, so maybe if you could just explain what that means to me.
Well, it's one of those ways that we have all those acronyms, right?
Right.
So we probably named as UBD in the past.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's the way that we design curriculum. So when we kind of took on the Atlas program, where we house our curriculum, is that we also took on understanding by design or backwards design as the way that we kind of map curriculum. So it kind of has 3 different stages. First one being all the standards, the second being assessments, and then the third part being kind of the learning plan or all the resources that we use.
Okay, thank you. Might have come up before, but I just didn't remember, but thank you.
Well, they're interchangeable. Sometimes they say all 3 words, sometimes they say 3 letters.
But that was a good explanation, thank you. So I did have a question to the administrator. One of the problems when you hire somebody who's as good as this, they're doing multiple things in the system right now. I know the goal was to have the person transition to the assistant superintendent, but I was wondering, does this superintendent have are you going to wear 4 hats? or what's the plan?
The plan is to present her tonight.
Yeah.
And get to the details tomorrow.
Okay. All right.
But no, genuinely, the nice part, one of the things that the team can speak to, and I think you see it, is, and I call it a team, like we are a team, and everyone's working together, and nobody really, we take our work seriously, but not ourselves.
Yeah.
And if someone needs to pick up, like we were untangling the cords this afternoon here to get ready for the meeting. And so Courtney and Wendy, or Miss Young, Miss Sprague, have been working together closely. Once we settle the dust a little bit, I think there will be some delineation, but right now, we're all in this together and working together.
Because I know she's doing the virtual academy, and
Right.
I know a lot of people are very happy with the virtual academy, and so.
Right.
need to discuss that.
And that will, so just to be clear, because people may be watching, the virtual academy will remain intact for the rest of this year,
Yep.
and Ms. Young will be the administrator for the virtual academy for the remainder of this year.
I will not leave.
Okay, good. And then, the other point, been around a long time, and traditionally in Woburn, the Woburn candidate, they got the job. But I just, for those who haven't been around as long, we've seen the superintendent, a lot of your appointments have been outside the system. So to pick somebody within the system that you're observing all the time speaks very highly of the candidate, because you are known to go outside the system when you think we need to. So I think this speaks highly of you, and we look forward to working with you.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Any more questions? Yes, Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. How are you, Gordon? Got one letter in here, recommendation from any of your student athletes from years ago that you coached.
Yes, if they remember me.
I'm sure they do, Courtney. It's not an unusual question these days, in this time, and what's going on, but I see the superintendent including in the questions here on the student achievement. You can broaden it tonight if you want a little bit. I think it'd be interesting to hear from you yourself, perhaps the answers you gave to the committee. On the student achievement, it was due to the COVID pandemic, we anticipate there will be many students demonstrating significant learning gaps. How will you address these gaps in order to close the broadening achievement gaps overall with the EL students and with the special ed students in our district? I think that's probably an unusual question. The superintendent probably didn't dig that out of the superintendent handbook. It's just fitting for this time and, what's going on. So I'm just curious, how you may have answered that question during the process.
Sure. So truthfully, I think what I really honestly did was walk through exactly what Ms. Ryan and I just spoke about in terms of kind of the 3 tiers of instruction is something that we think about kind of any year in terms of addressing student needs. And I think one of the reasons that we focused on it so much right now is knowing that when, we're back in all together, is that our tiers need to be to the best that they can be, and just making sure that we have that alignment in place and that we have the assessments in place so that we can address it as best as possible.
Yeah, I think you're going to nail it, down the road, whatever you come up with the team, as Dr. Crowley indicates, it's going to be a team effort. But I think, if and when we get there, I look forward to your efforts. Tough shoes to fill over there with Ms. Sprague. I know she was a great mentor down there in the pit. So,
She certainly is not going to have difficulty.
great. And, as Dr. Wells indicated, sometimes, we hear around town, well, that's the girl from Woburn, that's why she got the job. Obviously, your experience, your wealth of knowledge, and your effort around the district shines enough that you're sitting here with us tonight, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulrennan. Any more questions?
Ellen, I do.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Chisholm. I'm sorry.
I just want to make sure that, she has big shoes to fill, taking the place of Wendy, filling Wendy's office, not actually her position, because people are tough to replace. But and I want to wish Wendy the best of luck in her future retirement. Not yet, but future.
She's not going anywhere yet.
She's done many great things for the city, and we're very happy to have had her with us. And Courtney has, a tough road to follow down there, but I'm sure that she's up for the challenge. And I'm excited the fact that she has been chosen to move in because she has earned the respect of her peers. So I just wish her the best of luck, and I'm sure we'll see you at many meetings.
Thank you.
You'll have a Tuesday and Wednesday off your calendar.
She's like, wait, what?
Thank you.
And, for 3 months or so, we have them both. So it'll be like a powerhouse. A powerhouse of curriculum. Mr. Lipset, did you have a question?
Yes. And not as much a question as just a comment. I've had the pleasure of seeing what Courtney's capable of bringing to a school district. As chair of the curriculum subcommittee, we've seen a lot of presentations from Ms. Young, and I've always been years of Wendy Sprague. I'm very, very excited.
I know, a big feat, come on.
Excited to this role.
Thank you very much.
Alan, you also thank Andrew for serving on that committee.
Oh, and I want to acknowledge that Mr. Lipset was not able to take time from teaching Billerica to interview the candidates, but he certainly helped in screening the resumes. It was very helpful, so I want to thank Mr. Lipset for doing that. I sat on the interview panel, and it was extremely rigorous. It was very enjoyable, and Ms. Young blew it away. So that being said,
I'll make a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation.
I have a motion to approve. I have a second. Any discussion on that motion?
If you want to.
Roll call.
All in favor, roll call, please.
Ms. Chisholm,
Yes.
Ms. Cormier,
In favor.
Mr. Lipset,
Yes.
Mr. Kissel,
Yes.
Mr. Morenin,
Yes.
Dr. Wells.
Yes.
Ms. Crowley.
Yes.
Congratulations.
That motion
Congratulations.
passes 7-0. At this point, the superintendent has the authority to enter into
Contract negotiations, yep.
contract negotiations with Ms. Young for the position, and should the superintendent need to consult with the school committee on any matter, then he
I will do so.
will do so. Great.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you.
Yep.
You know, certainly, I know we kind of started with questions, and I didn't have a second to just say thank you. You know, it really is an honor and a privilege to be, you know, afforded this opportunity. I feel fortunate that I've been able to be with Wendy as long as I have, and don't think I would feel as ready had I not had her really to be a guide for me. And so I'm just super appreciative. Thank you
Of
so
course.
much.
And Ms. Young, you know, we're here for you,
Thank you.
and we support you, and we support Dr. Crowley, and we know you can be a great member of the team.
Thank you.
And welcome
Yep.
to the table.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Okay. COVID-19 update. Dr. Crowley, when you're ready?
Is there COVID?
Or do we want to take the administrative position? Get that?
No, well, I could do.
You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll do COVID-19 update, considerations in returning to full-time
Yeah.
in-person learning, and budget development process.
Yeah, so I'm going to go through some of the COVID things that I think people may already know, and some things that people may not know. I'll tell you that we're back in a similar space that we were in the summer to some extent. So let me just talk specifically about today. We continue to monitor the dashboard, so the dashboard that I shared with everybody at a previous meeting gets updated all the time. Fortunately, it's not quite as frequently, so I'm not getting the emails that there's a positive case with the frequency. Doesn't mean it's gone, but it just doesn't, it's not quite as prevalent. One of the reasons why I believe we have not seen the spread in schools is we continue our mitigation strategies. I was fortunate enough to read to a first grade class today, and the kids were all masked. And it's tough to hear them when they're telling you about their dogs and cats and everything else. But everyone is following the rules. And so it's really a tribute to our educators and to our parents and to the kids. So the strategies that we put into place back in September are working. The staff testing that's occurred on Fridays is going to continue through the month of March, and I just want to publicly thank City Hall for allowing that to continue. So we're testing over 200 staff on a voluntary basis every Friday, and so that will continue through the month of March. We do have the Abbott Binax testing ready to go at schools for those that have signed up to be available to be tested. And it's nice to report that the Woburn city rate is at 2.5%, which is the lowest it's been since, I think, August or September. So the rate in the Woburn continues to decline. So that mirrors, obviously, the state data and national data. Specifically to the Woburn Public Schools in Massachusetts, and these are really just my talking points, but last week, it was all over the news, but the governor and Commissioner Riley articulated that they wanted all schools to go back into school. What they left out was a lot of the detail to that plan. We were on a call with the commissioner last, I believe, Thursday or Friday, and Commissioner Riley indicated that his goal was to have in-person school, full in-person school for elementary beginning on April 5th. And so that's what he said on the call. What I can tell you is that he then followed up by saying that he was going to convene an emergency Board of Education meeting because he needs the authority to make this a reality. That meeting is scheduled for this Friday. So that was news that we found out today. So that the board is going to meet Friday. We don't know the outcome of that meeting. Presumably, they may allow him to move forward with the in-person plan. I'm just trying to gather my thoughts because we were on a call today with the Mass Association of School Superintendents, and I can just tell you that this has been incredibly frustrating. The goalposts keep moving, and we have a plan. It's working. The hybrid is working. No one wants to go back to school more than educators, but we need to have some kind of a plan to get back there. At the forefront is a vaccine for our teachers. Without a vaccine, which is close, it's really difficult to imagine teachers coming back into the buildings and feeling safe. And so with Johnson & Johnson coming out, with Pfizer and Moderna available, I just think that we need to advocate, and I have, with our local legislators and state representatives to prioritize educators. I've signed a joint agreement with Barbara Locke, the WTA president, in that regard. And then over the weekend, and it was released this afternoon, the Middlesex League superintendents, we met last Friday. We drafted a letter that was sent this afternoon to Commissioner Riley. You have a copy of that, which I gave you a hard copy. I'm going to release this to staff tomorrow morning, and then to our families a little later. Essentially, what we're saying is that we need a plan. There's so much information that is unknown. The CDC says it's a 6-foot distance. Massachusetts saying it's a 3-foot distance. No one's given us any guidance about lunch. How do you have lunch? And so there's a lot of different questions that we still need to answer. And if it sounds familiar to August when we were planning our back-to-school return, I remember transportation as a big question because that guidance wasn't released until late in the game. This time they did it backwards. They released transportation guidance a couple weeks ago that allows us to get students onto the bus as long as they're wearing masks and windows are down. But we still don't have a lot of those other pieces, as I alluded to, regarding spacing. And so we are left with a lot of questions and some challenges. So some of the challenges that we're facing, we built an incredibly elaborate system here in Woburn, and I'm really, really proud of what we've built in the hybrid model and the virtual model. But to make that happen, we've had to hire multiple staff and then also move staff from their regular classroom to become virtual teachers, or hire a teacher to become a virtual teacher. And so to just undo this is not easy. And so when they target April 5th as a potential date, we are saying, as the Woburn Public Schools, but as the MASS, we need to make sure this is done thoughtfully and done safely, so that when students and staff return, we're doing it in a way that everyone feels good about, and that we're making sure that students are receiving the education they deserve, but the staff are also receiving the protections that they deserve. We're still right now in the middle of a pandemic. The vaccines I've alluded to, I don't know. It's it's beyond my role to, I think everyone reads the same information. I think it's a supply chain issue. I hope that that changes in the very near future. Again, the spacing, is it a 3-foot or a 6-foot spacing? Again, there's a dichotomy between the CDC and Massachusetts. So we need some guidance and some clarity around what the spacing is. I alluded to the staffing issues that we have, or will have if we come back. So, for example, all of our elementary specials are teach remotely right now. If we come back, they're going to have to go back into the school, which is fine. We can do that, but it's not. We have to then figure out the schedules for how to make sure that they're not going to 3 or 4 different schools in one given day. So these are the kinds of things that we have to untangle. I alluded to lunch. That's a question mark, because what's the spacing required? I mean, if it's 3 feet and without masks, we're awaiting guidance. And then all of our special education and other student services have been modified to meet the pandemic and the hybrid model. And you saw Ms. Ryan tonight. We're doing an amazing job as a school system, but we have to be very careful to make sure that we're following the IEPs that are prescribed, legally prescribed, whenever we flip back into the regular order of business. And so our next steps are, we're going to meet tomorrow morning with the principal group, and that's we're going to develop a survey that needs to go out to our staff, because our staff are on the front lines and they matter, and we need to hear their voices in this process. I'm going to put up a slide in a minute, but we had subgroups set up in the beginning of this, I guess it was August. I'm losing, the equity subgroup. Dr. Baldessari chaired. Ms. Sprague was the curriculum and instruction subcommittee, and Bob Alcanada was the PPE, the subgroup, the finance and operations subgroup. So we're going to reconvene those groups. We're going to work. We have been throughout. We had a great meeting with the WTA leadership group this afternoon. Again, Barbara Locke, President, Eric Shukian, Jim Bynington, Mary Johnson. We've been working throughout the pandemic to make sure that we're supporting each other and understanding each other. Ultimately, we'll make a recommendation to you, the school committee, about a potential plan for a return. What we've said internally is that we will plan for April 5th, because that's what the date set was. I don't know. That may change. So, and I believe it probably will, but we can't, as a district, necessarily just kick the can down the road. So we have to have a plan, and we will have a plan. And our planning is actually started. Last week, I pushed out a survey to our families. Admittedly, there was feedback that the survey wasn't thorough enough, but I just want to walk through the results a little bit with the committee. We received over 2,500 responses. So our hybrid students, families, of the students that are in hybrid, 2,300 students would come back in person. 55 of our hybrid students would push to virtual academy. And I alluded to that earlier. We are going to maintain the virtual academy for the rest of this year. We don't have a choice. Our virtual academy, 92 of our students would actually come back out of virtual academy into the in-person, and 338 would remain in the virtual academy. And so the point of this survey was just to tease out initial response. Now we had, as I said, 2,500 out of 4,000 plus, so it's a decent sample size. That it seems like the hypothesis would be that people in hybrid would go into in-person, people in virtual largely would stay in virtual. But we needed to kind of get a sense of that, because as we think about untangling all these webs, we may have virtual academy classrooms that go from 12 students to 2. So what does that mean? And so there's a lot of logistical things that we wanted to try to tease out. The other thing that we wanted to ensure was that the hybrid students, we didn't have 1,000 people want to go into the virtual academy. So that was something that we needed to kind of benchmark, if you will, with our families. And so admittedly, it was not a survey done to compel people into a certain model. It was done just for our sort of benchmarking to see how to at least begin to plan. And so I alluded to this earlier. Our flow chart is actually the same as it was when we went from August. So we received DESE guidance when they provide it.
And then they change it.
Then they, the steering committee, has met, continues to meet. We of course have the central office team, the district subcommittees. That's what I was alluding to. The equity subcommittee, teaching and learning, and finance operations, and then the building-based teams. This time, what we're saying or thinking is that we're going to start a lot of the work at the building-based team and asking staff what a survey of staff. We don't have the survey built. That's tomorrow's project. And that being said, the staff at the buildings know more than we do about entry into school, etc., what lunch might look like, etc. That survey will influence this subcommittee work, and then ultimately we'll react in accordance with the DESE guidance. And so I'm trying to contain my. I'm enthusiastic that we're thinking about coming back to school. I really am. I just want to make sure that we're doing it safely and that we're doing it the right way for our families and for our staff and for our kids. Rushing to the finish line right now, it just doesn't feel totally right. But we will begin that process because that's what we need to do. And so it's a little bit, it's deja vu all over again. But that's where we are. We have a great team. Together, I don't think there's anything that we can't solve. We've committed to each other that we'll work 24 hours a day from now until whenever we need to get this done. So it's really, again, a tribute to the team, to everybody here. We're trying to respond as best we can, but the target kind of shifts, and there's a level of frustration in that regard. But again, we'll meet the challenge. So I don't want to disappoint people that thought tonight I was going to present a back-to-school plan in its entirety.
Next line.
So, we will. It's a work in progress. People at schools matter, and we need to hear from them. We need to hear what happens on Friday's Board of Ed call. I'm sure the commissioner will have a call with us soon thereafter, and we'll continue to work together. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Crowley. Dr. Wells.
Yeah, so I had thought the state was advocating the elementary school return, but you're planning for everybody, sounds like.
Yeah, so the state is advocating for a phased-in approach.
Right.
They want to prioritize the youngest kids first, similar to what's happening in Boston.
Right.
But what we've talked about is that, and we even talked about it today with the union leadership group, is that we would probably just say it's everybody when we come back, because Woburn can do it that way.
Okay, that's good. You've used the analogy of building a plane while you're flying. Now you're just taking a plane apart while you're landing.
Yes. And, you know,
Which we've never done before.
Right. Just assemble the plane as you'll. Yeah.
you know, I think, just to answer your question further, Dr. Wells, the guidance from DESE kind of splits the workforce. So you would have elementary school teachers doing one thing, and so I think the union, which is ready to go and ready to start talking to us as early as next week, which is just phenomenal. I can't say enough good things about them. But, you know, I don't think DESE took into consideration the labor rights and things like that. So, but Woburn does, and Woburn will, so. Mr. Kissel?
Yeah, I'm not surprised that, you know, that's a big percentage that's interested going back, because obviously I think the hybrid parents are just doing what we voted on, which is 2 and 0. So,
Right.
but I talking to parents, that's what I'm hearing, is like, my kid's already there 2 days, I'm good with them going back. And, you know, so I think the majority is going to say that. I think from a standpoint of, is there, so this is not a requirement from the state, this is just a suggestion, or is there?
The requirement doesn't exist yet, but we
Okay.
think it soon will.
And if it does, and are we still able to decide what we want, or again, it's grant money's cut? I mean, what happens?
So, on the call today, which was not, there is no requirement, but the hypothesis is that our Chapter 70 money could be affected
Yeah.
if we don't go back into the model that the state is telling us that we need to. So, for example, for every day that we're not in the model, it would be 1/180th of our Chapter 70 money, which is about $22 million, which is about $122,000 a day.
And then if it, and again, I don't think it's any rationalization that, you know, we're at that point, this isn't January 1st, you know, saying, you know, here's what we'd like to plan for the beginning of the year. It's 2 months away, and what would be our deadline if and when?
1 month.
1 month.
1 month
April,
from,
today's the second.
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah.
What's left?
3
2
weeks
weeks
after
in
that.
March, and April, May. Yeah, just wondering about the money more.
So, well, on the money, just to be clear, because that's a hypothetical. You know, I don't want to be misquoted. I mean, that was said in the meeting today, that didn't come from the state, so.
Nothing to decide.
Yeah, no, I know, but I know people watch that, or I just want to be,
Yeah. My guess is, along with you, probably the same, guessing that chances are that's what will happen.
It has been stated, though, if you do not meet your 180, that there would be expectations that the kids go to school on Saturdays or over vacations to make the 180-day requirement.
So we're looking at the DESE having some teeth along with the guidance. So the school committee has to respond, and we will, and we'll do whatever we can to support the administration to adhere to the regulations should they pass. Any further, yes,
Yeah,
Dr.
no,
Wells?
I think we're in a good position in the community, as demonstrated by the parents wanting the kids to go back. I think it's just working out the details, so hopefully we won't, make perfection stand in the way of the practical and what we can do and can't do. And hopefully they'll give us some time to get this plan implemented. I think, from a school committee perspective, I think we should advocate for a return to school with the safeguards in place, but with the goal of getting the children back to school as soon as possible. So that's just, I think as a school committee, that's what we should be working with the administration. Because I think the citizens of Woburn are ready to come back to school.
Yes.
And I think it's possible that it can be done, and we'll just have to work out the details.
agreed.
Yeah. Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess to the administration of Dr. Crowley, and I see here in your letter, Dr. Crowley, from the numerous superintendents across the state here, and you mentioned in one of your paragraphs, and I think it also has to be emphasized about the vaccination for staffing.
Right.
It's wonderful what you're saying, and putting kids with the teachers, getting back into the building. As someone that's, full up vaccinated right now myself, why aren't the teachers? And I know you said it in here, You said it publicly tonight, that's one of your priorities. You know, whatever calls, you have to speak to people to make that a top priority. But I think the other initiative here is Woburn will do it right the first time, rather than doing it half right the second, or third, or fourth time. And I think, you know, getting back to this steering committee, you know, rejuvenating this plan, it worked before, tweak it a little bit and align it the way you want. But I think you've done it with the superintendents across the board here to tell Commissioner Riley about the vaccination plan, and you bring out, you know, the discrepancies between the bus scenario, but the classroom, you're not talking about that. What about feeding our students? And so I think, I'm looking for, I'm sure you were just as shocked at the commissioner's press conference last week as the entire state was.
Yeah, so
I can just imagine you watching that saying, what did he just say?
Yeah, so
So-
if I could, because
Sure.
we had no advance notice. That caught us by surprise, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yet, in the same breath, he's telling you, Woburn schools, you got to follow the rules by April, whatever. Here we are, we're coming into March and April. Get your act together. I want to hear from Woburn or else. So, you know, I applaud all the efforts of everybody involved here to make this happen. But I think you've stated all the proper facts in here, that you need more information. There's so many unanswered, there's more questions than there are answers tonight. So we'll see what happens, see where it takes us.
Okay, any more questions for Dr. Crowley?
Okay.
Mr. Lipset?
So, Dr. Crowley, I have received a couple of questions from people in the community regarding that Desi had talked about possible waivers for districts that might have trouble making these accommodations. I wanted to just put that to you. You know, it's clear from your presentation that it's not something that we're going to be pursuing. I just wanted to sort of have you talk a little bit about that process, whether that was considered.
Yeah. So I don't know if people heard the question, but the question was about waivers from DESI and whether Woburn would be considering it. And so, Mr. Lipset, I actually don't know if we need to apply for a waiver or not, because we don't know what the criteria is yet. We may, if it's a function of making sure that we wait a couple weeks so teachers are vaccinated, we would apply for the waiver. And I don't know the criteria yet. But we feel like we don't want to wait to begin our planning because we're still going to have to do that. So if we need to apply for a waiver, we will once we know what we're seeking.
Mrs. Chisholm?
Would there be any reason that we could just extend the hybrid days to full days to begin with and try to work out the kinks with lunch and busing that way before we jump back into 5 full days? Are they going to allow something like that to happen and just slowly transfer everybody back to school? It just seems to go from 2 half days or a little more than half days to 5 full days in a building. It's going to be a big jump. I don't know how they expect that to happen.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Ms. Chisholm. Hi, nice to see you.
I know you miss me.
So it's actually, we're going to have a conversation with elementary principals tomorrow morning about this, but there's a couple things. One is you still need to feed them lunch. And the other part of it is a lot of the half-day, there's planning for teachers, for the students that are not in class with them they're on the remote side of hybrid.
Okay.
So that may be if we, again, there's no bad ideas right now, and so that may be one of our phases is just to extend the hybrid, but we need to work through all the potential hurdles for what that looks like.
Going to get the guidelines.
I would hope that they would at least be able to give you some time to say, okay, let's work through half the kids at school, doing lunch, doing bus, even if it's for 3 weeks to try to figure this all out and slowly bring everybody back. But I know the push is to be back. I'm one to be pushing for them to be back. I think it needs to be back. Teachers need to see their kiddos. and I think it's very important. And I mean, I just know that vaccine's coming out with Johnson & Johnson. It's only one shot done, so let's hope that that gets to us faster than we had hoped. I mean, it's scary, but I mean, we have an administration in Washington that promised everybody that the kids would be back to school in 100 days, and he's running out of time. So the panic is going to be there, the push is going to be there, and it's going to have to happen. I just don't want kids to suffer. But I also want to say, I hope those that are most vulnerable, age-wise, get a vaccine before anybody else. That's my look here. Sorry, but everybody treats themselves as a priority. We all are priorities. And we just need to make sure we get kids back in school and we don't have to jump through hoops to get that done. Because there's people out there that haven't fit a criteria, that have major conditions, that are suffering. I don't want a healthy 30-year-old teacher to think she's more important, or he's more important, than somebody that's 65 with comorbidities. That's my soapbox. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chisholm. Any further
It's
comment?
sort of a
Yeah,
procedural thing.
sure.
You know, we may want to think about extra meetings.
Yes.
Because obviously, if we have to be in April 1st, then the next meeting is like the 24th, 27th. You know, you don't want to spring it on the community that.
Yes.
So like, you know, we might want to consider that, you know, upcoming and, you know, work with the superintendent once we get guidelines.
So
hopefully.
I think once we have more guidance, then we can react, you know, plan more.
Right. Because one of the things that worked was the continual dialogue that went on through the summer.
Yes.
We've got to compress it, it sounds like, but I think we still need the dialogue with the community so the community knows what you're thinking. Even if we don't have finalized plans, here's
Yes.
where we're thinking, we'll come back and then give the finalized plan. Because dropping it all at once, I think, is a bad idea.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Wells, and I was thinking to myself, we should add in another school committee meeting and maybe even have it remotely and allow people to speak and have public comment to kind of vent through what people are thinking. But I think the administration has a lot on their plate right now, and Dr. Crowley will let me know if we can have an interim meeting.
We'll know more once Friday, hopefully.
But right now, I think we have a infrastructure of a plan to plan, which is just great. And we have meetings with the teachers to hear from them what's going on in their minds. And we have a lot of knowns. We have a lot of PPE. We have at least 2 sets of desk spacing guidance. And so I think there's a lot of knowns and a lot of strengths that Woburn has, particularly our community that's going to be very patient and compassionate. So I think we're in a very, really good place right now. And obviously we have excellent leadership here. So I think that we will get through this, and Dr. Crowley has the full support of the school committee, and we will keep the committee, the public, this will be transparent. There will be no, guess what, you're going to school tomorrow type things, And we do support the teachers being vaccinated as soon as possible. And we also support, sounds like consensus, that we do want a full return to school as soon as possible, but with mitigating strategies to prevent the spread of COVID. All right, does that summarize everything? Okay, Dr. Crowley, anything more?
No, I'm just turning to, I mean, we've had conversations about this for a couple weeks, but or a couple days anyway. I tried to cover everything. Okay. They would tell me if I didn't.
Yes, I know
They're not
they
the Kumbaya choir.
They're just in their minds, they're like, okay, tomorrow, this is what I have to do tomorrow. All right.
Thank you.
I think that closes that for now, but we did have a budget development process. Ms. Alcanada, do you want to just give us a quick overview?
Sit somewhere in the middle of all this other
Yes.
stuff. Somewhere in the middle of all this stuff, we have to create a budget. So just a quick update on the timeline. We are having our final budget meetings with principals and department heads on Thursday. We have had 12 meetings to date, and we'll have 4 more on Thursday, and that will conclude that. Next week, I will use that week to finalize the draft budget and create some budget summaries. And then the plan is to submit the draft budget to the school committee on March 24th. I'm sure that I'll be doing some type of initial presentation on where the budget is at that point and where we can go. As you may remember, we changed the process a little bit for that budget to be referred to the finance subcommittee.
Over the ensuing month, the Finance Subcommittee would have the opportunity to analyze and assess that budget, dig into it, and help create some spending priorities for us. On your April 27th meeting would be the date when the budget would hopefully be approved by the school committee. And then, of course, that would give you more than enough time to transmit to the mayor by April 30th. I do want to point out a couple of things in terms of budget considerations. One, of course, is through the state budget process, Chapter 70 can always be affected, so we have to keep a light on that. And also, as you know, there is the American Rescue Plan of $1.9 trillion that has been passed by the House of Representatives and now before the United States Senate. There are billions of dollars for local cities and school districts. I don't know what that necessarily translates to Woburn, but if we did get some type of infusion over the next several weeks, monies that we could use for FY22, that would be significant to our budget process, and certainly would identify our spending choices and priorities. So, again, I don't know if that will pass, how much that might mean for Woburn, if it will be after we pass our budget, but it might be something, obviously, that we'll be working with City Hall to maybe come back and take a look at that budget with the new number after we pass our budget. So COVID has made a lot of things fluid and uncertain, and that extends to the budget as well. So that's where we are at the moment.
Dr. Wells.
Yeah, with regard to the budget and any money that comes the school department way, I think, again, having served on it before, I was on the committee when we got the economic relief during 2007, 2008, when the economic crash. And one of the things I think, as a school committee, I remember I learned, if we're going to get an influx of cash, make sure it's spent, or try to spend it on non-reoccurring items. Like, I think that money was directed to try to keep people employed, but the problem was, it was a one-time infusion. Yeah. We employed people, and then it's always hard to, you don't want to let people go. And so if money comes in, it's better to try to spend it on, supplies and things like that, if the money dries up 2 years later, we're not on the hook for all these expenditures we made going forward. So that's just one thing to consider.
That's an excellent point, Dr. Wells. And I remember, too, in that time when that money came in from the last session. And my colleagues to my right and Dr. Fowley will tell you that there's a lot of opportunity for you to get that money to, for lack of a better word, rebuild or restructure the curriculum and assessment and
things like that.
Learning gap. So yes, recurring and non-recurring will be absolutely something that we would consider.
And then I'll save some time at the finance part of the thing. We talked about the process we're going to use at the subcommittee level. Mm-hmm. And so the goal at the subcommittee level will be to look at changes in the budget, either additions or subtractions, and really focus in on them. We're not going to do every section if the sections don't change very much. And everybody will have their budget, and they will be able to ask questions, about individual line items if they see something they want to know. But I think for the finance subcommittee, we're really going to look at, what's being asked, what's being cut, and what are the justifications for doing that, and does it meet what we think is a reasonable justification, so that when it goes to the mayor or the council, we'll have a good support for those actions. So that's sort of the approach we're going to take.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. Yep. Ms. Chisholm, you heard that, right? That's how, okay, since she'll be running the meeting. Yep. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wells, for bringing that up. Any more questions for Mr. Alcanada on budget process? Well, it sounds great, and I think it's going to be very streamlined, and I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
Can't wait.
Yep. Me too.
I think that concludes that. And next we have the school committee needs to approve a position for administrative support for central office operations. Mr. Alcanada, you want to present on that, or Dr. Crowley?
Sure. Yep.
Either way.
We have, the position is special education administrative assistant. It is really a position in the SPED department that is going to allow the SPED department to be more effective in the early childhood program, from registering children to working with the early childhood coordinator, to managing the paperwork, all aspects of that program. This is a program that is quite active, and we have found that there is a need for that position. The job description also will allow, from time to time, for that person to be pulled into central office to handle some tasks that we may have going on, whether it be a very special project or a busy period of time. So, but primarily this person will be in the SPED department. We have taken a look at the SPED budget. This is something that we can certainly afford into the current SPED budget, and of course we'll pick it up in FY22. So I believe you do have the job description in front of you, and this has been through the Personnel Subcommittee. It's been vetted through the Personnel Subcommittee as well.
Dr. Wells also vetted it. Dr. Wells, go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe, in general, we don't like to do out of budgetary time new hires. I wonder maybe if the superintendent can explain, how's he identified it and why it's a critical position that needs to be filled.
Yeah, so the timing is, that right now, predominantly, it is, Mr. Alcanada alluded to, it's in special ed, but early childhood.
Mhm.
So we have hundreds of students that are in our early childhood program, and if they were their own building, they would certainly have a secretary on site. Right now, there's no dedicated person, and we're in the process now of enrolling for next year. And one of the things we found is that it's inefficient to have multiple people, and it's trying to enroll students, dealing with parents, dealing with placement appropriately, and so we just think it's. I understand that it's out of sequence, but I think it's important to try to get this person on board before the enrollment really picks up, and so that our students and families have a contact person, particularly with the early childhood, but then throughout the year to support the special ed transportation side of the aisle, and to Mr. Alcanada's office, processes as, there's ebbs and flows, and so that's the design, and the timing is such as I just articulated. So.
The only other thing I'd ask, Madam Chair, based on the superintendent's discussions about the potential challenges we're going to face going back to school, I'm willing to support it, but I'd ask the administration to think about holding it until you have a better handle on what is going to be needed for going back to school, because there may be budgetary issues that we don't foresee now, and we might have the cash aside right there, but we may need that, because I don't know what the city is going to be able to provide like they did for the opening, how they'll be able to help. So maybe make sure there's discussion so that, the important thing is to get the students back to school and make sure there's sufficient funds for that, depending on what we need to hire and so forth.
If I might, I think, and you can correct me, there is money available from the federal government now, the ESSER 2. We just have to submit our grant application to support the return to school. It's, I think, $1.9 million. $1.96 million to support students coming back to school.
Okay.
And so I understand your question.
Yep.
This would be not pulled from that.
Okay.
From that.
As long as, I just wouldn't hate to restart the process and we're scrambling.
And then all of a sudden,
Right.
we don't have enough money.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Understood.
Yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Ms. Cormier and then Mr. Mulroney.
Sorry, just to that point, I was looking through my minutes, I didn't see it from the last couple of meetings, but I know Ms. Ryan said that there was going to be a huge influx of 3-year-olds, and the early childhood was going to be largely impacted, so it seems like this is something that would be very important to have in the coming years. So, just to that point, it's kind of going to be something that we're going to need to find to put in place.
Thank you, Ms. Cormier. Mr. Mulrennan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, this, it's in my minutes from the Personnel Subcommittee that Mr. Akanada referred to, and that meeting was on 2/12, so it was even before the Commissioner started his talks about returning. And the same discussion came up, and some of the same questions were brought up by myself, Ms. Chisholm, Ms. Cormier. So we do have the job description in front of us. Each member has it. Mrs. Chisholm's concern, I think she's listening in, was that the mayor gets notification and gets the explanation again why this position is so important. And I'm sure there's going to be more in between the lines here, but we've got duties listed 1 through 28, and quite a array. And I think when it was brought up at this personnel subcommittee, we just kind of had it for central office, for special ed department, for the preschool operation. It's going to be a calendar year status, and that question was answered. And it's going to be, the roles will be distributed among other departments. I know the administration was trying to come up with different percentages here and there. It's more or less as needed, as a ebb and flow of the year goes. This person will be diversified to other avenues and other departments. So again, it came up in personnel. It was voted 3-0 to approve. Motion by Mrs. Chisholm, second by Colleen, and voted 3-0 to approve and forward tonight with the job description and indication going down to the mayor with an explanation. So I think it's a position that's needed. Obviously, Ms. Ryan will tell you that. Her department is growing, her needs. We talked about some of the issues that she has tonight and the challenges before her department. And I think it's, as Dr. Crowley indicated, to spread someone out among, just the main preschool division is a task in itself. So I think this is a needed position. And again, it seems as though the funding is adequate and it'll be there when needed. So there you have it.
Thank you, Ms. Mulrennan, for speaking on that. Any further discussion on this? Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the position to be negotiated through the administration.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion passes, and there is now a new created position in the central office for administrative assistant. Okay, next subcommittee report. So I sat in on finance. You read my minutes. Is there any questions on my minutes? And do I have a motion to approve the bills? Dr. Wells?
I'll make the motion to approve the bills.
Second.
Do I have any discussion on the approval of bills? All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes.
I'll
And
make
for the
same
record,
motion.
Mrs. Chisholm was not absent. She was at the meeting. I was taking notes for her. Because she has 100% attendance rate.
I'll make a motion to approve the balance of accounts.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to approve the balance of accounts? I'm seeing none. All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes, that motion passes. We have approved the statement of accounts. Anything else coming out of finance? There was the discussion on the budget. Mr. Alcanado went over that, and I think that really summarizes the minutes. But you have a copy, should be having more questions. Next, we
Great
have...
job, Ellen.
Thank you. Curriculum and data trends. Mr. Lipset, do you want to table your minutes until you can deliver them in person, or is there anything pressing?
Yeah, if that works for everyone, I'm not sure how easy it is to hear me right now, so.
Okay, so we'll table Mr. Lipset's minutes until the next meeting. There is something coming your way. I need the subcommittee for curriculum to review a request from the administration to make AP exams voluntary. Right now, they're mandated. There's a request coming from high school administration to perhaps consider making them voluntary. If you could bring that to your subcommittee and have a recommendation for us for the next meeting, Mr. Lipset.
Absolutely. I'll coordinate with Ms. Sprague and Ms. Young.
Yes, it's coming from curriculum coordinator Rosemary Donovan. through Dr. Baldessari brought it to my attention. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much. That's an important topic. Personnel, Mr. Mulrennan, did you have anything more?
Yes, we had a couple other agenda items on the
Thank you.
12th of February, and again, we'll have Bob speak on this. The early retirement incentive, Bob, and actually that other thing you just spoke of is brand new, even since the meeting on the 12th. I don't know if you want to bring up the details that you had for us on the 12th about the school teachers possibly getting an early out this year and the options available to them.
We talked, yes, we have talked internally about putting forward some type of proposal that may have an early separation incentive for not only teachers but for other staff members. So we have, it is in the discussion phase. We've also talked to an outside agency as well, ours, about putting some analysis together for us. We have just received their analysis, and we're still processing that report at this point.
Okay, great.
Madam Chairman, can we send that to finance? Because I think it's more financial impact than personnel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for taking that on.
And-
That could be reviewed in finance. Mrs. Chisholm, did you hear that? Thank you very much. Okay.
And another matter that came up, I know Mrs. Chisholm listening tonight, although Ms. Ryan had left, we had some emails resent to us concerning a issue on one of the SPED North Reading transportation bus issues. Ms. Ryan said she was going to address both of those emails, concerns from a parent, so although she's left, I'm pretty sure she was handling it that morning, so we haven't heard back.
It's been handled.
Yes, I got a response from Director Ryan that she reminded the transportation company that they need to wear masks.
So that was the meeting on the
Very important
12th,
issue.
and the meeting adjourned at 8:35, unless anybody has any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mulrennan. Policy and Safety Subcommittee, Mr. Kissel, you have policies coming off the table?
Yeah.
No, going on the table.
Going on the table, I mean, yeah, so we did meet on 2/26/21, 11:30 a.m. by Zoom. President was myself, Dr. Baldessari, Chair Ellen Crowley, Dr. Donato, Wendy Sprague, Colleen Gillingham, and Pat too. I'm definitely going to defer to Dr. Baldessari for some of these, but basically we talked about the disposal of surplus materials and talked about the wellness policy, which isn't a policy. The equity translation policy was discussed as well, and then the entrance age AED was discussed. But tonight there's some action.
Any preference on the order that I go?
Dr. Baldessari, could you go through the entrance age first and see if the committee would consider taking it off the table tonight on an emergency basis, considering it's...
I will.
Thank you.
Okay. In the policy manual, I did consult, and the committee does have the authority to dispose of their normal policy when something like this comes up. So the COVID crisis, pandemic closing has caused considerable disruption in education, as you all know. And a number of families who may have had their children in kindergarten this year may have not sent their children to kindergarten as it's not compulsory. Other families, because we were in a hybrid model, they have selected to send their children to kindergarten in private school, or have a second or maybe even a third year of preschool. So we've had a number of parents come forward very recently to say that they would prefer that their 6-year-old children enter kindergarten as opposed to first grade. The current school committee policy that we have that's in our policy manual that you have, it says right on the top left, Woburn Public Schools current policy, states very clearly that children will enter kindergarten if they are 5 years old before September 1st. And if you skip down to number 3, it states that children under 7 years of age who have not previously attended school shall be regularly admitted to first grade. So the way that this policy is interpreted, at least by me, is that 5-year-olds go to kindergarten, 6-year-olds go to first grade. Now, there is some confusing language in number 3 where it says who have not previously attended school. And then at the end of that sentence where it says only during the first 2 weeks of the fall term. That was certainly confusing to me. It's been confusing to our principals who are admitting students. And we have had some situations in which the principals have been confused about, children entering kindergarten at age 5 or age 6. Now, what would happen if we gave parents the choice on that is we would have great disparity in our kindergarten classes. Kids who have just turned 5 and kids who may be, approaching 7 years old in the same educational grouping. So there would be almost a 2-year age span. If we were to say to families, well, at the age of 6, you can enter kindergarten as opposed to age 5, we may be coming to you in the coming months and say, we need more kindergarten teachers, or we have too many first grade teachers. And we could really cause a disruption in the flow of our student body coming into the school system. Clearly, the language of the current policy needs to be addressed because specifically what is stated in number 3 really isn't clear to me. It doesn't make sense, and Ms. Sprague and I had gone over this a number of times, and we determined that it would be more advantageous for the administrators in the system and more advantageous for our families to have a policy that more clearly delineates the entrance age for children into the Woburn Public Schools. So Ms. Sprague and I had explored other policies from districts around the state. We found a couple that we liked, and we crafted language that reflected what previously exists in the Woburn Public Schools, that we will admit children when they're 5 years old into kindergarten and 6 years old into first grade, and they'll regularly progress in their grades as they move on. That language was presented to the Policy on Safety Subcommittee, and upon their affirmation of that language to go forward to the full committee, I had the language vetted by Counsel Michael Joyce from Nuttall and Joyce and McAvoy, who are special education attorneys, but they also do a lot in the way of policy development as it pertains to student services. This policy was, as you saw, Mr. Kissel, it was revised by council and then sent back to us. Ms. Sprague and I did review it, and we do agree with the language that is in this policy that really gives us and our families a clear understanding that if you're 5 years old before September 1st, you're going to kindergarten. If you're 6 years old before September 1st, you're going to first grade. Now, there are situations in which families will say, but my child is not kindergarten ready, based on a number of factors. Could be socialization, could be academics, could be many different things. And what we are able to do as a result of our retention policy that currently exists is a student could potentially start in first grade. And after they're in first grade and they have the opportunity to be observed and assessed by their teachers and other professionals, the principal, in collaboration with the parent, could essentially move the child back to kindergarten. So the principals still do have latitude to make individual decisions pursuant to the retention policy, but the entrance age of all students into the Woburn Public Schools should be uniform, and it should be clear for parents and administrators. And that is why we are advocating for an expedited approval of the draft entrance age policy that you have before you tonight. And well, certainly Wendy or I are happy to take any questions that you have about this.
So and I think as chair, I have the authority to move it forward, but I'd rather hear from the committee because the new policy is more protective of families. So
Maybe we should discuss
go
it
ahead,
first.
yes, I'm sorry,
and then
Dr. Wells, please.
Yeah. So, a couple of things. One is, I think instead of saying assistant superintendent of students for student services, because over time, things change, names change, and positions. I would say the superintendent or designee, or his or her designee,
Yeah.
something like that. That way, it doesn't depend on your position title staying the same forever. And that just makes it cleaner. The other thing is the last paragraph. Way back when we were trying to do this entrance age policy, I think this is the one that was always the tricky part, the exception. And so I don't know what, I think the school committee, in consultation with the administration back then, was really trying to avoid people coming in earlier to the school system. And I don't know whether the exception thing could say something to that effect, because the way it reads here, essentially any of the age restrictions could be, disregarded based on, decision by the principal and the superintendent or the designee. And that's, I think, where the administration back then was having issues in the school committee, because then if there's a lot of pressure, you've all worked in schools, pressure from the parent, and finally just say, okay. So I think if we could do something like that, because I understand your thing is that they could go backwards. I think that's what you're saying, rather than going forward, in terms, they could go to a lower grade but not a higher grade.
The retention policy is actually called the retention and promotion of students.
Yep.
Dr. Wells, we
Yep.
actually did have a student this year
Yep.
who moved up a grade by that policy.
Yep. But this is for the start of the school.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying, is that decision whether to, so that's the paragraph that I think is tricky. Because
Well, I think it's the paragraph before that that says the only exception to this policy.
So do we need the
It should say the decision whether to grant this exception, not an exception.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, the above exception.
yeah,
Okay, that makes sense.
for the above.
Yep.
To your point on the renaming the assistant superintendent for student services.
Yep.
It does say and, so should it say or if it's
No,
and,
it should say,
it's a
Yes.
collaborative thing?
yeah,
or
it should be the superintendent and the principal making this,
Yeah.
or the designee.
superintendent, designee, and principal?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is going to stay as and.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Any more questions while Dr. Wells peruses the, Mrs. Chisholm or Mr. Lipset?
I don't actually have a copy of this. But I've got the basic understanding from the discussion, so I'm fine.
Okay. So how does the committee feel about acting on this tonight?
Fine, because we can always modify policies if we find out it's not working, but I think it behooves the administration to have a policy that they can work with. So I'm fine with that.
So do I have a motion to suspend the rules to pass
I'll
this?
make the motion to suspend the rules so we can adopt the new JEB entrance age policy.
Second.
Okay,
Roll
any
call.
discussion on that? Not
Mr. Chisholm?
seeing-
No, good.
No questions. Are you doing a roll call?
Did you have, Mrs. Chisholm?
Yeah.
I think
There's a
she had
motion to
questions.
suspend the rules to actually pass this policy tonight. And we're calling a roll call vote?
Right. That's fine, because we can always amend it if we need to change it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Now roll call.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Morenin?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes. Okay, that passes. And despite the confusion, everyone completely understood and everyone heard each other deliberate that, so that's a valid
You wanna make
measure.
the motion to approve the policy?
Okay,
Now we have to do the motion to approve the policy.
Okay.
That was just to suspend the rules.
thank you, Dr. Wells. Do I have a motion to approve the policy with the amendments agreed to?
With the amendments?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on passing the policy with the amendments? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Morena?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes, okay, so this will now be our official policy. Thank you, Dr. Baldessari and Ms. Sprague, on all the work. It was a tremendous amount of work. Thank you very much. Next policy, Mr. Kissel. Sorry, Dr. Baldessari.
So the easy one is that at the previous meeting, school committee member Cormier had asked for us to explore the school district wellness program as exists in our policy manual, which I did. And what I discovered was that, this policy with an adoption date of April 2006 is not really written clearly as a policy. There's language in there that states, things that are examples of things your school district can do. And the language of the policy really isn't clear on what would be expected of any school district administrator or personnel. I did further exploration to find that the school district wellness advisory committee is actually governed by state regulation 105 CMR 215 that I also provided you a copy of this evening. I corresponded with Attorney Michael Joyce on this topic. As is the case in special education and many other facets of district oversight, we do not need a policy where clear state regulation exists. So my recommendation is that the committee vote to remove file ADF from the policy manual completely and allow me to work with the SSA subcommittee on the establishment of a school wellness advisory committee, since one does not currently and has not existed, certainly in my time here.
So
Great.
moved, Madam Chair.
I have a motion. I'm sorry,
I
Dr.
had a
Wells?
question. We have lots of policies that are law. We have non-discrimination policies and things like that. So I don't think that's necessarily precludes having a policy. And I'm a little concerned about, because we didn't develop this on our own. You can see the source is the MASC. And so, I'm a little concerned about taking a policy out that the MSAC, I understand the policy is separate than maybe having the wellness committee, which, is an administrative thing or whatever. But I think, we should maybe look at it a little more before we take the policy out, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so I have
We should
an
maybe talk
objection to
yeah.
the recommended action, so why don't we send the wellness policy revisions to the SSA? The SSA can take the policy that we have and revise it to, instead of removing the policy and then making a new one.
Or
Does
they
that
could
make
just
sense?
check with MA, I think it's simple as just giving MSA and SAC a call and just seeing, is there something we're missing by taking this policy out?
Okay, well, why don't we refer it to SSA, and SSA can
SSA.
write a new policy for wellness anyways.
By
Does that-
SSA, shouldn't it be policy?
We use that SSA.
Sounds like there's content in it that Dr. Baldessari wants to use at SSA.
The Wellness Advisory Committee, as stated in regulation, I believe would be more suited for SSA. But we certainly can do, we can do a two-pronged approach and have the implementation of 105 CMR 215 go to SSA and the reevaluation of file ADF go to policy.
Well, I'm on SSA as well. Are you on policy? No.
Yes, she
I
is.
am.
So there's an overlap, so I'm sure whatever discussion we have, it won't be off the agenda.
Could have
But
Yeah.
two meetings at once.
Yeah.
That's great, okay.
Okay.
And then we won't remove a policy until we talk to, I'll call MASC and
Yep.
it'll be fine. All right,
Okay,
thank you,
thank
Dr. Wells.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to that, so I guess so we have the CMR about the committees, but we also need to have a policy, correct? So
That's right.
Well,
So-
the committee is mentioned in the policy,
Yeah.
but because we are part of the federal child nutrition programs, we're required to have a policy.
Yes, so.
Wellness?
The
Pol-
issue that I
Go ahead,
have
Dr.
with this policy was that it's not really, it wasn't really written as like a policy.
I mean, it's like
It
it's got like
doesn't, so.
the following list, each, yeah.
So Because the wellness committee doesn't exist, it's not a policy that's being followed, which was the recommendation for removal. We certainly would, explore a new one, but we can leave this one in while we do that.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah, so we decided to leave it, so we
Yes.
would have one. That's going to policy. Wellness analyzation of the regs is going to you. Awesome. All right, and next policy.
Okay. And the final one is one that has not previously existed for the disposal of surplus materials. You did make a vote recently to dispose of surplus materials. It's commonplace for districts to have policies such as this. I did correspond with the city auditor, about, if something like this would be helpful or not, review the dollar values and, complying with Section 30B. Also corresponded with Attorney Joyce, who did say it is good practice to have a standard way of going about disposing of surplus materials. What we have is different certainly than what's in the ordinance of the city of Woburn. And this one would just be proposed to you to go onto the table for your review.
We voted 3-0 that day to bring it to the full committee. So that we may or maybe were, I don't know. We said it? Okay. So everyone had a chance to see that. I think we sent it out by email to everybody. And we just need to make a motion to table it for 30 days.
Make a motion to put it on the table for 30 days.
I have a motion to place this.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Mr. Lipset, did you have a hand up? No, okay. All in favor, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Chisholm?
Yes.
Ms. Cormier?
Yes.
Mr. Lipset?
Yes.
Mr. Kissel?
Yes.
Mr. Mulrennan?
Yes.
Dr. Wells?
Yes.
Ms. Crowley?
Yes, motion passes. DMB disposal of surplus materials, equipment, and supplies is on the table for 30 days. Are there any other policies, Mr. Kissel?
There was one, it's not really ready for, I'll mention it because it's part of the minute. KBB, I'm not sure if I have it right, equitable translation policy. Not ready to be discussed yet. I'm just going to wing it here and just correct me as I go. Top 5% of languages need to be translated as a whole. Jen Judkins using some technology and exploring third-party translators. One issue that may come up is when we have someone who can't read. I know I'm paraphrasing a lot of this, so if you want to just take over that piece again.
As we talk about equity and access for all of our families and students, Ms. Cooper and Ms. Mendez-Sheldon and I have been looking at policies to, ensure that we're doing the best that we can, communicating with our families who don't speak the English language, but also families who might, and parents and families who might not be literate or may need some assistance in understanding documents that they're going to sign. And so we've been working on the policy. I presented a very rough draft to the policy subcommittee. We're working on getting technology to ensure that we can implement such a policy, and until such time as we have it, you wouldn't see it come forward as a policy for committee's deliberation.
Colleen had also asked about if it wasn't, the language needed to be translated as not part of the 5%. If it was specifically for like special needs. I know with special IEPs and different special ed needs or any types of needs like that, we would have to get a translator, but for the general distribution of materials, it doesn't, I guess, as long as it's not about 5%. Pat? That's it.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Kissel.
we adjourned at 12:30, and a lot more work to do.
Thank you, Mr. Kissel. Resource and Capital Planning Subcommittee,
The least
Dr. Wells.
working subcommittee has not met yet.
All right.
Still waiting for information about the old Lyman School.
Thank you very much.
We still just gonna pick up in about 30
Student
days.
Services and Achievement, Ms. Cormier.
We're meeting Thursday at 9 a.m. here.
Fantastic. Future agenda items. 9:45 at night. Who has any? Okay, great. Correspondence. We received 4 correspondences
Move they be placed in the permanent records.
Second? Unless you want to highlight them at all, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, those are placed in the permanent record, and the following are Jennifer Baker-Jones. Had some questions before filling out the survey regarding staff placement in the VA, and felt that she needed to know more about whether her children would change teachers before committing to the survey. Dr. Crowley addressed that. Melissa Greer was just generally commenting to the school committee to slow down and remember that changing the education system could create instability for students. Valerie O'Brien wrote a very detailed email advising us on the CDC guidance. I really appreciated that. Elizabeth Beya, B-E-Y-E-A, was one of the parents that seemed to be caught in the age 6 issue with regards to enrolling her child in first grade at the age of 6, which was addressed tonight. So those, I really appreciate those constituents reaching out to us, and remind everybody that they always can address the school committee at any point during this process. And at that, we don't have executive session, Dr. Crowley, is that right?
No, we don't.
Motion to adjourn,
Motion to
Madam Chair?
adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.